So to get started today, we're going to meet our speakers, and I am Dee Reinhardt. I will be our guide today, and joining us, helping us make everything work smoothly is Natasha Telger from Illinois WorkNet, and our wonderful guest speaker is Jon Heiderscheidt, who is the coordinator for safety and security for U46. And U46 is the second largest school district in the state of Illinois. He has been with the schools for how many years now, John? 9?
Since 2006, so almost 7.
And the school district covers 10 municipalities, 41,000 students, and 57 schools. So that's a big area for John to take care of. But he's also a instructor for the Crisis Prevention Institute, and they train employees how to effectively manage and deal with things like bullying. So we're very fortunate to have John join us today. So John, hello, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone.
So today we're going to be talking about the bullying circle. What is bullying? What will you see? How does a bully bully? What's cyberbullying? What happens when it gets worse? What can you do to help? And does a bully ever realize that they're being a bully? If you have any questions during the webinar, please make sure to type them into the chat pod, and we will take care of those things for you as soon as we're done with our presentation. So the first thing that we'd like to do today is talk about what is bullying. And so what I would like to do, just to test your knowledge, right off the bat, we're going to pull in a couple of poll questions here. And if you want to take a moment and answer those questions, we'll find out how much you know about bullying just to begin with. And you can pick more than one answer, so please pick all of the answers that apply. How are they doing, John?
Doing very well. This is a pretty neat program. Hitting the marks.
All right, we're going to give you just a couple of more seconds here to answer the questions. We've got quite a few people on the call, so I want to give everybody a chance to get their answers answered. And John is going to explain these things for us so that we can find out more about this. All right, we're going to give it 5 more seconds, and I'm going to count it down. 5, 4, 3, 2. Thank you very much for your answers, everyone. We appreciate that. So, John, let's tell the audience, what is bullying?
So bullying, it's important organizations and schools, workplace, wherever, define what bullying is. But generally speaking, bullying it's characterized by an intentional aggressive or an intentional action, a behavior that involves an imbalance of power between people or strength between people. It's usually exemplified through physical, verbal, nonverbal, or relational means, which means it's really about how people interact, how people use space to influence how others behave, and it's something that it can be easily seen when you are a trained and person that's looking for it, but it's relatively easily experienced when you're the recipient of someone's aggressive behavior and when someone has an intent to influence you negatively.
So does bullying give people power?
Yes, I would say bullying does give people power. It certainly gives them influence over others. It gives them power over others. And power is an interesting thing. Power can be used negatively or positively. And in this case, bullying would be seen as a negative use of power.
And in a lot of cases, do bullies need an audience?
I think that varies from situation to situation. I know my experiences back in the 70s growing up. Typically, we experienced bullying or were participants in bullying at school, in the playground, between each other as friends. We didn't have the social media outlets. So that varies a little bit today, that bullying needs an audience or doesn't need an audience. I guess would depend on the vehicle of communication, what you're using to communicate negative influencing behavior.
So is a bully everywhere, or is the bully bullied at home?
Bullies are bullies everywhere. I don't think they are everywhere. Um, it depends on probably the setting of the situation. I find, and in my experience, I find that people who are bullies are, or what we define as bullies, are typically people who may have been bullied before, may have had an experience in their home or in their setting where they live, where the negative behavior, like harassing behavior or aggressive behavior, they've been the recipient of that. And that learned behavior is something that they take to the schoolyard or they take to the playground, and they start acting that same behavior out with other people. A normal part of growing up, I guess you would say, is that we do end up being like our parents or like our family setting, and we learn how to use those behaviors wherever we go, team sports, wherever that might be.
Sure. Now, where does bullying normally occur now? And does the size of a school or a class create more bullies? So like a bigger school, does it make more bullies?
Not necessarily. I'm a firm believer in that attitudes reflect leadership, and what that means is when the folks who are in charge or supposed to be managing the school are paying attention and watching closely to these types of behaviors, and then doing something positively when it occurs instead of just treating it as a disciplinary step. Treat these situations as a opportunity for learning is really more important than just using discipline to handle bullying situations. So the size of the school, the size of the building really doesn't matter. The size of the classroom doesn't matter. It's really the people that are managing those places. Where bullying probably occurs more, I think our participants today could share with us where they would feel where they would be bullied more. I think your bathrooms, I think places that are unsupervised, locker rooms, during when people are dressing, in different settings like that are harder to supervise for adults.
Right. So who can be a bully? And are boys bullies more than girls are?
No, in research today, no, and I probably yesterday research, but I don't think boys or girls are either one is more or less. What we see though is the behaviors between the two are much different. Boys tend to be more overt, more physical, more kind of in your face or using up someone else's space to bully or intimidate others, whereas girls tend not to do those things. And these are all tendencies. These are not absolutes. So when you're looking at girls or boys, you're looking at, and a good example would be, a Sherman tank driving into a situation to handle a problem versus a sniper, if you will, standing afar and kind of using ways to influence behavior. The difference between boys and girls. Girls tend to be more relational and controlling in how relations work, and boys tend to kind of walk into a situation and try to use their physical attributes to influence the behavior of others.
So one last question before we move on to the next slide. Do bullies have a lot of friends?
It depends. Some of those friends are just folks that don't want to be bullied, so they want to be the friend of the bully, so they're not the next victim. And it's a real strong theme that I'm trying to teach here at our schools with our staff is that empowering the bystanders to act and to help them find a way to address the bullying behavior themselves is often a time to really make an influencing step the students, not necessarily with adult intervention. So yeah, sometimes they have lots of friends, but are those real friendships?
Right, right. So on our next slide here, we've got some stats that you can take a look at. And I've got some quotes from a website that I found that had some things that said how kids have been bullied. So Alex says, they punch me in the jaw, strangle me. They knock things out of my hand, take things from me, sit on me. They push me so far that I want to become the bully. And Jemiah says, it feels like everybody just turned against me. It was like 9 of them, 9 or 10 of them calling me stupid and dumb. And they started throwing things at me. And one of the guys said something to me, and he threatened me, telling me what he was going to do to me. And he'll fight girls. And everybody was laughing. And then Kelby says, you can always count on something happening when you're walking down the hall at school, in the classroom, after school, when I'm walking home, when I'm walking through the parking lot in the morning to school. I wasn't welcomed at church. I'm not welcomed in a lot of people's homes. And then Kim says, if it involves repeated malicious attempts to humiliate a helpless victim, if the victim is fearful, does not know how to make it stop, then it's bullying. What do you think about all of those comments, John?
I think they're right on. I also think you're talking about kids making statements there that don't know who to turn to and don't have a resource or a trusted adult to turn to for help with these situations or to even share them. It's important that we define bullying, and here in our school district, and I would assume most school districts around the country have taken this on to make sure you define bullying clearly. And that's often the first step, because if I define it, then I can tell staff what to look for and to help them. In your examples here, you're talking about things where people aren't watching and kids don't know where to turn to.
Right. So what are we going to see in the beginning, John? If the signs of bullying in the workplace are compared to bullying in schools, are they similar? Are they different? What's going on there?
I think they're right on similar. In fact, I think, well, in the research that I've conducted and the research that I've seen over the years, when you look at even workplace violence and school violence, the symptoms and the signs are much the same and very, very similar. The age bracket of the person involved in those acts is just different. But with the first signs you're going to see, and in the Crisis Prevention Institute, we like to break it down into the first steps. So we have action steps for staff to take. But for the bully, the first types of things you're going to see is what we call anxiety. And in that, what you might see from the bully are things like, staring, mocking, using obscene gestures, pushing, shoving, things like that going on in the playground or at the school setting. We call the person that's being bullied the target, and what you'll see, the anxiety from the target would be head down, lack of eye contact, may ask or find a way to leave the situation, asking to leave the classroom to go to the bathroom, I need to go see the nurse, those kinds of things to be watching for. And I like to talk to staff about looking for that in content. So during recess, if we have a kid that needs to go to the nurse all the time, there really might be something happening here. And the bystanders, if I could just finish up the one point here, bystanders, what you'll see is, we often talk about a bully, making a joke or mocking someone, and then people laugh. And, and then, I didn't mean it, or, I was just joking. Well, really, there's no such thing as just joking, because there's always an intent in the statement. But you'll see bystanders, or the kids that are standing around, nervously laughing, congratulating the bully, or doing behavior like that. And really, that's an avoidance for them, because they really don't know what to do, and they haven't been empowered to act.
Good point. So you mentioned a moment ago that bullying just kind of seems like it should be a normal part of growing up, but is it really?
I don't think it is a normal. I'm 6'2". I was 6'2" in my 6th grade year at elementary school, and I remember being bullied. And if I can still remember that today, I'm in my late 40s. So it's something that it sticks with us, and it really does. I think it affects everybody differently, but more substantially for some than others. But it shouldn't be a normal part of growing up.
Right. Do students with disabilities get bullied more?
Absolutely, absolutely. People who are different um, are seen to be picked on more than others, and it's really uh, is that is that a part of growing up? Well, it is and it isn't. There are other ways we can help kids not be so cruel when they're interacting with people that are different from them.
All right. So I watch a lot of TV. So when the football players from the TV show Glee throw those red slushies on the Glee kids, is that bullying?
Yeah, I don't watch Glee. Sorry about that, but I'm thinking of the movie Pitch Perfect because I have 3 daughters and a son who are teenagers right now, and when he throws the burrito on Patricia, and yeah, that's absolutely a form of bullying. And if we look at the definition here, even in U46, repeated, conscious, willful, or deliberate intent, direct or indirect, to physically or psychologically intimidate or distress someone else. Physical, social, or verbal actions or intimidations towards another person with negative intent. So I think that fits our definition.
Yeah. We have a question from the audience. The students want to know what do you do if the bully is your boyfriend or your girlfriend?
So what do you do? How do we empower? And what do you do if it's your boyfriend? Well, you might want to pick a different boyfriend, and I say that as I would say it to my daughter, but I guess I would say to one of my daughters is that, if that person's going to continually act that way towards other people, when is that finally going to come towards you? And how is that going to go? And how are you going to like that treatment? Um, it's a difficult thing when you care about somebody and their behavior is a little bit different than what you want it to be. But for bystanders or for people who are watching this, I think it's important that we tell them to stop. We say that that's hurting someone's feelings. If you're the target or you're the bystander in school, or in a social setting, it's important to tell them first, stop. You're hurting my feelings. That hurts my feelings. And when you do that first step, we might actually be calling attention to the bully to say, maybe that bully doesn't know that they're actually hurting someone's feelings. Maybe that's possible that they grew up in an environment that's normal, and that's how moms, that's normal for their family, and that's how they act, and they don't realize that they're actually hurting someone else.
That's a good point, John. Let's take a look at this poll question here and have the kids answer. So what do you think kids who bully or have been bullied feel about school?
This is a really good question, and as they're answering, I'll kind of talk, and where I grow great concern, in the statisticians show us, is that absenteeism from school, there's a certain percentage that is actually called school avoidance, and there's some research that tells us that some of those kids aren't coming to school because they can't manage those social behaviors. They're being harassed, picked on, and they're being bullied.
So if a child is being bullied, would that be a good reason to pull them from school as a parent?
Well, no, I don't believe that. I believe actually ignoring the problem is actually a contributor to the feelings you carry on into adulthood, and ignoring it is just another way to cause more pain. helping kids confront or find a way to manage these situations, helping your own children to find ways where they learn how to manage a bully or bad behavior is really a skill that they can take into the adult workforce. So pulling them from school and not having them go there anymore or running away from it is actually, I think, counterproductive to really helping your kids grow and become better adults. So when they're 18 and they go in the workforce, you know, if we don't teach them those skills, they go in the workforce, and what are they going to do? Leave their job and run to another one? That's
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
more difficult today.
right, right. All right, we're going to close this poll and move on to the next slide. And so how does a bully bully? So if you gossip about somebody, or if you're considered a backstabber, or if you exclude somebody from your group, does that mean that you're a bully?
Just not that one piece of it means you're a bully. There, you know, again, for the definition to define it, it's repeated, conscious, willful, and deliberate intent, direct or indirect. It's repeated. So the one time or the two times you don't want someone in your group, or what, you know, the example that you gave isn't really going to fit the definition, and that's probably just a normal part of growing up. But when it's repeated, when one person repeatedly bumps into all these situations where they're excluded, ostracized, or whatever that might be, that's a pretty difficult situation to deal with.
All right. So what is the most common form of bullying among boys and girls? And then we can talk about the points on the screen.
Sure. So the most common for boys and girls, we talked before, is boys tend to be a little bit more overt with our behaviors. Um, we are boys after all, and that's kind of the way our brains are wired up. And girls tend to be more relational, ostracize, groups of kids in other situations. So probably boys are more physical, pushing around, knocking things out of kids' hands, throwing things at each other, bumping kids in the hallway. Probably, I'm thinking elementary school stuff where it starts would be things, during kickball or dodgeball, constantly picking on one kid and throwing it at their face instead of their legs, and doing those kinds of pieces. For girls, it's tends to be more relational, tends to be more about, and those are just tendencies. These are not absolutes. So students, please don't think that this is an absolute. It's certainly not. But these are tendencies that you see. There are girls out there that are just as physical as boys, and boys out there that are just as relational as girls. So there's always overlap on both of those.
So what are some examples of what could be offensive and what a bystander can do to stop it from continuing further?
So yeah, the next steps, in the CPI terms, we call this the defensive or directive. So the bully, you'll see, the progression here of, when it gets worse. Yeah, a bully will have a denial of behavior. So we talk to the bystanders about increasing observation. If they feel that there is, a student that is constantly harassing other kids, let's stand around the target, and let's help the target. Let's call out the behavior. Let's tell it like it is. If you see something, say something, and encourage kids to collectively, say, hey, stop, that's hurting their feelings. Call out the attention to what it is. Establish a safe zone where bullying can be reported safely. In our schools or wherever kids might be, is that does the school have a way where kids can report and find resources to help them deal with it? Now, I'm not saying solve their problem, and I'm not saying that discipline's the only way to do this, but in most cases, giving kids a means of being able to report and having staff be able to go in and talk to kids about what's happening is a better resolution sometimes. In extreme cases, though, that's not the solution. But for most cases, that can be a solution that we can use.
All right. Let's move along here. and talk about what cyberbullying is. We've got cell phones, we've got smartphones, we've got the internet. Um, what's going on here with this?
Yeah, and it's just it's a vehicle of communication, and that vehicle of communication, it's just it's we can't control where communication is going to be in 5 years. So certainly it's been difficult for most of our school administrators to deal with the things that happen on Snapchat or Twitter or whatever overnight when they come into school the next day, and there's an angry student about something that someone keeps saying in the social media sectors and making fun of them or saying bad things about them. So and that's been actually a theme last school year, and we're anticipating it to move on to this school year, is how do we empower administrators to have the resources to deal with those situations. In Illinois, a law was changed last year in January that says that that type of behavior by students, when it affects other students in the school, can be dealt with as a disciplinary step by schools, whereas before we couldn't do anything about what kids did on Snapchat or Twitter. Now that's changed.
So when somebody says, "Oh, I didn't mean to," or "I was just joking," what does that mean?
So you're making a cover for your behavior. You're trying to excuse your behavior. I don't believe there is such a thing as "I was just joking." There's always there's always a meaning in what you say. There's always a hidden meaning, or a very overt or very in-your-face type meaning that what you're saying does mean something. You are saying what you think. Although, we wouldn't say it if we didn't think it.
All right. I threw a poll question up for everybody to answer. And how does cyberbullying really differ from traditional bullying? I want you to take a look at that. And while you're looking at that, I want to talk about an article that I posted from Huffington Post in the chat pod. It talks about Girl 1 posted on Girl 2's Facebook page a comment that she was trying to do to pick a fight on Facebook. Girl 2 called out Girl 1 by saying, "Well, that's not right. You don't know me. You don't know my dad, blah, 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 blah." Girl 1 and Girl 2 were both at a party a little while later and saw each other. Girl 1, who had posted the bad comment, lunged at Girl 2 and started wrestling her, kicked her in the face. Girl 2 had a fractured face and scratches on her eyeball. That's just not a good situation, and it all started from something that some people might think would be, "Oh, that's just Facebook." John, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and with that, I think there's something else there too that maybe we don't know about or what's not written about. There's probably some background of a relational or a bullying issue that was going on before that was even posted. I would venture to say. Um, what you could also be talking about, so that's all being said, that's possible. There could be some background to it that stuff could have been going on. It's also possible, we do have students out there that are from very different home environments, and some struggling home environments, lots of stress in houses, the recession today, that stress, sometimes relieves itself into being very quick 0 to 100 miles per hour reactions from young people or even adults. So that one statement made by a student on social media really hit home on another kid and took their power center away and unnerved them to the point where they just became enraged. And the result is what you say, someone gets physically assaulted and injured pretty devastatingly. Excuse me.
Now you mentioned Snapchat a moment ago. What about sexting? Could that be part of bullying as well?
Well, sexting it's an act of sending sexually explicit messages or photographs. When sexting was all the talk a couple of years ago, it was more about, individual kids or even adults sending pictures of themselves to each other for whatever reason, and some that might be consensual. That's one way to look at it. Another way is that you share a picture of yourself, unfortunately, over social media. You text it, and then someone takes that picture and then sends it to everyone else, and posts it everywhere else. That's harassing. That's the primary purpose of that is to harass another person with negative intent. So that's definitely counter to any kind of consensual relationship. But sexting is, it's one or the other, but this where you take the picture and you send it to everyone else to make fun of someone or to say, hey, look what they did. That's definitely an embarrassing thing, and that's a negative intent. So sexting it's definitely a problem. I would tell my kids, whatever you send to one person, no matter how much you trust them, they can put it anywhere they want. It's now worldwide, so be careful what you send. Be careful what you send.
And it's always there.
Yep.
So what happens when it gets worse? Is bullying the most common form of violence in our society? And let's address a little bit about what happens in the community when bullying happens.
So what happens when it gets worse is that you're going to see a progression of behavior. When it gets worse, what you're talking about is that one individual, the target, if you will, is they're looking at no way out, because obviously if it's getting worse, they don't have anyone to talk to. They don't trust the school administrators. They can't tell their mom and dad or an uncle or somebody, so they have no way out. So they're in a crisis mode, and their only way of coping, and their coping strategies are probably getting pretty low, their ability to deal with this is, I believe it becomes rage and it becomes anger. And so now the bully keeps on doing these things, or the group of bullies keeps doing these things. I liken it to a volcano, and the target, not every volcano erupts, but occasionally, sometimes, rarely, but they do erupt, and when they erupt, it's a pretty dramatic thing. And that's what I liken to school violence. That's kind of the picture that I have, is that not every kid who's bullied is going to erupt into violence, and not every bully is going to be a bully forever and keep bullying when when they can change. But these things that we've seen, this workplace violence and the schoolplace violence, they're very similar symptoms and very similar circumstances. The common theme, I think, is important for all of us to know, is there was always something that somebody knew before it happened, and that's something that you knew you weren't able to tell anybody, or you didn't tell anybody, so people could have done something about it. So I believe it is related. I believe the bullying piece is related to this. It's never okay to use violence to solve problems. Not certainly advocating anything like that. Actually, I wish that we would be better at helping each other when we see bullies, and we see kids who are bullied, and we see targets. The bystanders need to be empowered to act and do something about it in school or in the workplace.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what can we do, or what can you do to help yourself, or what can you do as a bystander to help the person that's being bullied? How do you deal with them?
Yeah, so, and how do you deal with when kids aren't doing what you want them to do, and how do you influence and change behavior? And I'm a believer that, people don't want to change behavior until they really have to change behavior. So in that, how do you help a friend who's being bullied? Number one, get them some help. A trusted adult, someone that's outside the situation, not emotionally involved, and someone that you can talk to or hopefully trust. You can get some advice about how to handle that situation. The second thing is bystanders we can do is we can stay around those kids that are being bullied, be a buddy, assign a buddy system. And it's important that we tell people who are bullies to stop. You're hurting my feelings. This is not okay. I coach parents who call and say my kid's being bullied, and say it's an elementary school situation. And one good way to do it is to encourage your kids to say stop loud enough where everybody can hear. Because many bullies use space, use proxemics, use nonverbals, um, use staring, whatever it might be, to harass other people that necessarily the teacher can't see at the moment or other kids don't see, and that just progresses and continually gets worse. So when you know someone's struggling from being bullied, really help them, be around them, teach some verbal strategies and how to have verbal self-protection strategies. Increase your observation of your friends, and let's talk about alternative behaviors. What's an alternative to being bullied, and what's an alternative to being a bully? What can we do differently?
One of the stats I read that was the answer to the question, do kids who are bullied always tell an adult? And it said that only 25 to 50% of bullied kids talk to an adult. So do they feel like they're tattling if you see somebody, or if you're being bullied, do they feel like they're tattling if they tell a teacher or an adult?
That might be a piece of it. It also might be a piece of it that they think if they tell, the bully's gonna get worse, and the bully's going to do something more, or the revenge factor if you get me in trouble. And it could also be that I don't go home and tell my parents when I'm being bullied because I'm embarrassed to admit to my parents that I can't handle the situation, or I don't know if my parents are going to overreact to the situation, go to the school and yell at the principal, and that's going to make my life worse. So there's a couple of things at play here, and how that shakes out. It's important to know that if I really believe if a student doesn't have anywhere to go, it's really a sign and indication of the environments that we create in our schools, and being responsible, as I am, for those environments. Really encourage that we just don't use discipline to deal with bullying behavior. We really have to do some social coaching. We have to do some replacement behaviors. We have to help the bullied, the target, if you will, with some pro-social skills, and helping them manage this. And we have to help the bully too, to realize that they're hurting someone.
We've got one more slide here that I want to talk about, and then we've got a load of questions that I want to try and answer. So, does a bully ever realize that they're being a bully?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they do when we do the things like telling them to stop, and we call their attention at the moment, and we do it in the moment. Some of us learned that we were bullied, or learned that we were bullies later on, and learned that through realizing that we've harmed someone or hurt their feelings. And some of us never realized that. And we're all capable of changing, and asking for forgiveness for things that we've done. But ultimately, yeah, I do think bullies can change, and I really think it's about how we can get the information as fast as possible to them, to tell them that they're hurting someone's feelings. They're hurting someone.
Hopelessness and isolation seem to be two feelings that are being felt by the victims. So is there anything that happens from there that may lead to worse tactics happening, like maybe bully side?
You mean the target being hopeless to deal with the situation anymore, and the bully kind of realizing that and taking advantage of it?
Yes. Yes.
And continuing, and then other kids kind of pile on, and then they kind of add on to the frustration of the bullied person, the target, if you will.
Right.
And yeah, that's kind of going back to that visual of the volcano, that hopelessness, that low coping skill, that constant, and now more people are piling on, and I have no one to turn to, and I have nothing, and that social isolation really is a crisis waiting to happen. And if we know someone who's in that crisis or that type of crisis, really is time for us to act and to take more of a stance on empowering bystanders and empowering all of us to act upon that.
One stat that I read, it said suicide is the third leading cause of death for Americans between the ages of 15 and 24. And I would seem to think that a lot of that could have been because of the fact that they had been bullied.
Yeah, I don't have the stat on what the estimations are of that. I don't know if it's a lot, but it does speak to your suicide's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and if that we believe that, then we can act on that. And if we see someone who's in a hopeless situation, whether that's through bullying or other things, home situations, abuse, whatever that might be, we can help others and be better bystanders.
So tell me, once a bully, always a bully?
No, I don't think so.
And if we ignore bullying, will it ever go away on its own?
No, and it won't. Ignoring is not a strategy. It's something that I remember my father said to me is, ignore bullying, just ignore them. Well, ignoring is not a strategy. That really just causes more pain because it's kind of like running away. Our systems of dealing with problems is called fight or flight, and it's in our brain centers. And we want to fight the situation or we want to run away from it because we want to survive. We want to keep living. Well, that really also speaks to how we manage problems and how we manage situations. So running away for something that's hurting our feelings and making us angry isn't always a good solution.
No. So last slide before we deal with some questions. People are the way they are based upon personal experiences. Words matter. They can hurt even if you don't mean them. And personal space matters. If you see something, say something. And foremost above everything else, you need to tell someone. Tell the bully to stop. And if you can't tell the bully to stop and it doesn't work, then tell a teacher or a trusted adult that can help you. Stop bullying, and it will be a better place down the road. So let's take a look at some questions, John, and we've got about 10 minutes that we can answer these. So they're going to kind of be rapid fire.
Sure.
What do you do when a bully is the star football player of the school? Can the school or should the school turn a blind eye to their behavior?
Absolutely not. There should be never a blind eye, and I firmly believe that it doesn't matter the perceived status, and that's your perception of the captain of the football team. Absolutely not. Never a blind eye, because that's just going to encourage more things from happening. And if you ever turn a blind eye, what you're doing is just encouraging more types of behavior like that, and that's not the environment we want in our schools.
Going back to the relationship with the bullied relationship, one of the questions is if the person is afraid of getting out of the relationship, what can they do? What are some ways or resources or tips for getting out of a possibly abusive relationship?
Yeah, I'm sensing from that question that if she's talking about, or he, I'm not sure of the gender, but they're talking about being in an abusive or a relationship where that person's a bully, and you're talking about, I'm not sure how to get out of it. You're probably talking about something more. So there are, go see your school social worker and get some ideas and some strategies about that type of dating relationship, dating violence. There are resources out there for you, and go seek some help, confidential help, and at least talk to someone so you can get some ideas on how to move forward with where you want to go with your life, and if you want to get out of that relationship, how to do that. I don't know if your best resource is your home, the folks at home, but if that's not the case, there are confidential resources that can help you.
What is the school's responsibility if a child is injured at school from a bullying situation?
Well, any child that's injured, they're in our care. In schools, I guess we're called the parents while they're with us. Um, and we have to investigate. If a child is injured at school, it's our responsibility to what's called due process, and that's investigate what occurred, find the facts as best we can, and then find out why it happened and what happened, and then follow our student code of conduct. Define it if it's bullying, follow definition, and then follow our levels of consequence. And and there are definitely levels of consequence for bullying, cyberbullying, causing injuries, assaults on students or staff, all those pieces. It's very well defined in our student code of conduct.
One of the things that we were talking about earlier is the fact, and this comment here says that a lot of teachers and administrators won't get involved, but one of the things that you do is work with schools and teachers to make sure that they know these things so that they can become involved safely without getting hurt themselves. So that's one of the things that you train people on, correct?
Yes, and I'm a retired police officer and I was a school officer working actually at Buffalo Grove High School for 4 years when I was a police officer in Buffalo Grove. And, you know, helping people, adults or children, learn what to do in these situations, learn how to see it and learn how to see it better is really, that's what prevention is. And in being a police officer, I would tell you clearly, the police can't solve all problems. It really takes everyone. It's called community policing. And when we're all part of that community, we can all help each other. And I know that sounds wonderful and nice, but it really does work. When we all do a little bit more, a whole lot happens.
Does society send out mixed messages by promoting bullying, or kind of promoting bullying, by teaching students to be more assertive and strong and controlling?
I'm, I don't think I think society does send out mixed messages in media and what we watch on TV, the movies we watch, all those things. On there's always going to be mixed messages, but it's the messages that we choose to use. It's the messages that we choose in our hearts that we let influence our lives. So it's really, society can do whatever society wants to. Personal choice about what you say, how you say it, what you do, what you allow to happen, what you don't allow to happen, are really personal choice. And, to me, it doesn't matter what society does. It matters what I believe is right and wrong. I liken this message to many students. I've said before, how do you not be a bully? Well, it's would you say it to your grandma? Would you make this comment to your grandma? That's kind of a check off, or what if you don't have that type of relationship? Is, you know, being making the right statement is really about, not offending someone by accident. And when you're talking to people or talking in groups, focusing on the statement of, I'm not going to offend someone by accident, there's really a lot to that statement, because it really kind of checks us off on a lot of things that we might think are funny, in the moment to get a laugh, but they really are hurtful.
All right. This is a quick answer. Does bullying continue throughout all of school?
No, no, and we have one example at one of our middle schools, Abbott Middle School. We're really got a neat program happening there, where the staff's really involved, and there's a confidential reporting system, and it's really working. And some of the things that are going on, that we're really getting more and more information. It only happens more when you allow it to happen, and that's the attitude that I'm really trying to promote with our staff, all around of all of our 57 schools, is that, you know you get what you allow, and if we allow it not to happen and we take a different stance on it, we can stop it.
Right. Does bullying occur in greater numbers between different ethnicities?
It's hard for me to say with any accuracy. Certainly don't have any data specifically. But I do think different ethnicities, cultures, um, talk to each other differently, talk to each other in different settings. A good friend of mine is from the south side of Chicago. He's actually the director of discipline for our school district, and we talk about the differences in our cultures and the differences of our upbringings, and we have a lot of great conversations about it. And some of the things that we do at home don't really echo well out into school, because they're acceptable here and they're not acceptable there, and that lies in the confusion for kids that I'm just being like I am who I am at home, and this isn't working for me here at school, or they're calling me a bully when I'm just doing what I do at home. So there are differences there, yes.
All right. We've got about 3 minutes left, John, and we've got about 20 questions left, so we're going to try and do these as quickly as possible. What's the difference between bullying and nitpicking someone?
The perception of the target.
All right. Do girls choose to bully more in school and males choose to handle their issues outside of school?
I don't think there's a definite on that one way or the other. I just think it happens where it happens. It happens in school because that's where we put kids together. It happens on social media because that's where the kids can get together.
All right. How much should the parents be included in the attempts to address their child being a bully or being the victim of a bully?
Great question. As much as possible. But that also has to be that we do have those parents out there that want to solve the problems for their kids, and that's not always helpful. It's got to be looked at as a learning opportunity, and I think that's in the approach of the administrator.
All right. Could it also be because they are afraid that the student will take out their bullying on them? For example, their car person. Oh, this is about the teachers getting involved. Could it also be because they are afraid that the student will take it out on them, for example, their car, personal items in the classroom, etc., or continue to test them in the classroom, in front or in private?
Sure, it's a possibility. It's a possibility, and that's why training and awareness is important, and that's the theme, and that's our goal here at U46 is to keep training as much as possible in the awareness of bullying and what it looks like and what to do because of it.
In regards to cyberbullying, one of the attendees asked, are there criminal repercussions to cyberbullying?
There could be. It depends on the law enforcement agency. There are laws about it. It really has to get into chronic and repeated harassment as far as harassing. The important thing to remember is that what you say in social media is on a publicly right-of-way, because all of this goes over phone lines or the cable lines. Those are public right-of-ways. And so when you're harassing or you're saying nasty things to each other, it could be a law enforcement issue, definitely.
All right. What are the legal actions that if I take to protect my child if somebody is bullying them? Well, obviously you don't want to fight fire with fire, but there could be ramifications if somebody does something illegal even though they're protecting their child.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that is a possibility. I encourage parents to allow us a chance as school administrators and teachers to address the behaviors and to try to change them in those ways. If law enforcement's involved, let law enforcement do their work. And if that doesn't work, we can have civil ramifications. You can sue people. You can also use orders of protection in the court systems to help you that way.
Right. Does society instruct/teach that bullying is an act of criminal behavior, and how does this demonstrate mental health issues?
Does society teach that it's a criminal act? I don't know. It's not always a criminal act to be a bully. It is something that we're trying to change in schools and behavior that's not necessarily criminal. But the mental health issues with this, it's not necessarily about bullying, but it could be because one of those students who is being the target could have mental health issues, and that can revolve around it. So it's a possibility. It's not an absolute, though.
What are some venues a victim can go to for help, support, and resolution that include a healing process?
Yeah, and we call that therapeutic rapport. We call that really a coping strategy, and there's this complete strategy in what we train here for our staff. And the coping strategy is understanding and replacing behaviors. But the resources are somebody trusted at the school, your parents, maybe a family member that's not your parents, that's a trusted adult, maybe a neighbor that you trust. There are social service agencies probably in the communities and where you live that you can go for resources, some kind of a crisis center or some type of a youth service agency, boys and girls clubs. Those kinds of places really do have great people, social workers there that may be able to help you find a different way to cope and have a different strategy.
All right. And last but not least, we have students asked, because we are in an alternative high school and it's not a big high school and the ages are different, does this mean that bullying comes in a different form, or is it not as popular?
It probably does come in a different form in that the power centers are a little bit different. In an alternative setting, you go to, if you go to those schools, you have kids from different settings that are coming there who had already came with a suitcase full of reasons why they're there, and that probably goes from the suitcase reasons from family stressors, financial issues, all of those other things. So I would say if you're at an alternative school, you're already dealing with a load of problems and a load of stuff. And yeah, a bullying would probably look a little bit different to you, whether you are the bully or the target or the bystander.
All right. If kids are the bully and they have done some harm to someone, are the parents held responsible?
It would depend on the age and the situation. The parent responsibility laws are a little bit different. It is possible they could. It's a juvenile law that in juvenile court parents can be held responsible, but typically if something's going to juvenile court, it's pretty severe and it's been happening. It's the end result of something very problematic. So yeah, they can be held responsible for injuries. Whether they're sued for like libel about just harassing comments, that's a civil court issue, and it's harder for me to kind of nail down.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so very much, Jon Heiderscheidt from U46. You've helped us tremendously on this webinar. We do need to jump on to our next one. We will be posting this recording